everyone. Thank you all for being here in this last 30 minutes of Supply Side West. How was everyone's day? Good? Everyone's here because they need to sit down. Yeah? That's we get it. Before we begin, I'd like to thank AAK for underwriting this session. Go visit them. Go chat afterwards. Not during. Wait till after. So what I've learned in the very short time I've been in the food and beverage world is that not all oils are created equal. With myriad options, identifying the best choice for an application can be challenging. In this session, we're joined by Monica Harvin, VP of Oils and Fats at Tradden Organic, and Pri Panescu, Lead Scientist, Plant-Based Specialist at Good Food Institute. Thank you both for being here. And I took a flyer on the how we're doing this session, guys, so you can give me some feedback after if this is going to go well or not. But we have like 5 different oils, and we had a convo a month ago about which oils we should talk about, and we know there's a billion. We picked 5 that we thought would be interesting. What are some other good words? There's a lot of some like press going on with oils now, so we picked some interesting ones, and we're gonna have like 5 minutes to talk about each oil. Because I wanted to get some specifics, formulation specifics for you guys. So that's how we're gonna roll. We're gonna start. Sorry, need my notes. So sorry. With show announcements. Oh man, you guys already know, and that's us. Hi. All right. So procuring and formulating. We're gonna start with coconut oil. Let's start with procurement.
Alrighty.
Ready?
So
you ready?
Yes.
Got your note cards? Okay.
Got some note
cards. So let's
cards
talk about
here.
What are some challenges with procuring coconut oil?
I would say one of the biggest challenges that I find is weather. Just overall, the weather truly affects, coconut oil is coming from these tropical regions. The main producers, there's going to be, Philippines, Indonesia. So the weather really impacts the production of the coconut. Excessive rainfall is going to cause, damage to the crop, whereas, drought is going to cause, less yields. So overall, that's causing, damages on supply or shortages of supply if there isn't a good overall weather. So that's really going to cause the prices to go up as there won't be enough supply. And also the weather's also going to impact logistics overall. It'll cause a lot of, a typhoon comes in. So there'll be a lot of congestion at the ports. And then all of a sudden, all these containers, they need to leave at the same time. So you see skyrocket in prices as well, just in logistics and people getting the product out of the country. So I would say those are 2 just really big factors.
So it can be hard to maintain the price of the coconut that you're using.
Yeah, exactly. And seasonality is also going to contribute to that. So there's certain, buy at the right time because that'll affect the price as well. The season, and when there's more availability, the price will be, a little bit lower. So if you buy in the low season, so overall you want to buy in the dry seasons of the tropical countries.
And then, sorry, I'm going to let you talk, I promise.
I don't need to talk.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. We'll just. I invited you here just to look pretty. So what about? Does that mean that you should always maybe go for dried coconut? Like, is that the only way to formulate? We can talk about that too. The nutrition. Is that really what we're looking at? That's smarter. Is there a way to do fresh coconut because of this difficulty with the seasonality?
The different coconut. I'm not certain how that's going to affect the oil. Right? I'm not certain. I'm just on the oil specifics. I would just say it's more in the drying regions. And I would say maybe a better answer for you, or question for you.
I would say that I don't think a coconut has high enough of an oil content for it to do the same things that you would expect from coconut oil itself. Another really interesting thing is if you look at any of the other oils that we're talking about today, or a lot of other oils that are available, and you look at how much has been produced over the past 2 decades or so, coconut oil is pretty stagnant. It's actually not really growing as far as it being produced more. There's a few reasons for this. One of them is that like coconuts themselves are a high enough commodity, a high enough demand of a commodity that people who grow the coconuts and people who produce these oils don't really see the value add of having to go through all of that processing if you can just very cheaply produce the coconuts themselves and then sell them at a price point that's pretty good. And yeah, if you compare it to palm oil, especially, but soybean oil, all these other oils, it's the only oil that when you look from 2010 to now, it's pretty much flat as far as how much is being produced, while as all the other ones are going up, 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 up. We're producing way and way more of them. Some other issues is that it can only be grown in very specific places. So if there are any supply chain bottlenecks that arise from climate or whatever, that is also stifling how much it's growing. But the other thing is, coconut oil is like kind of staying stagnant, but it's popping up everywhere, right? It's like in all of the products. It's not just in food, it's in cosmetics, pharmaceuticals,
Yes.
like people are using them across the board. And it's kind of scary to think about that, like, we haven't been growing more of this thing, but demand is going up, up, up for it. The people who are making it aren't really incentivized to make more of that oil. So, and we'll talk about palm in a second, but palm is just so extremely competitive on a price point that people aren't feeling as much desire to make these coconut oils. So I'll just say from a procurement standpoint, like you just have a lot of added issues for when these bottlenecks do hit. You don't really have much mobility of where to go with coconut oil.
Let's go to the like nutritional things to keep in mind with using coconut oil.
Yeah, I am so confused about the coconut oil health halo. I know that there was like a year where people were like really into it and like oil pulling and stuff
Oh,
like that.
yeah.
Yeah, do you remember that?
Yes.
I'm like, coconut oil is a bunch of saturated fat, you guys. Like, there's nothing like too magical about it or anything. It's just like a very high saturated fat oil. As a result, it ends up being solid at room temperature. I lived in LA, like I moved 5 years ago, but when I was in LA, I'd like look at my coconut oil funny and it would be liquid. You know, it's not very like it's solid at room temperature, semi-solid. So, yeah, from a nutrition standpoint, it is a saturated fat. If you eat too much of it, it will increase your cholesterol, and that's like the magic of coconut oil. So I'm not really sure where the health halos came from. Any oils will have the added benefit of being able to solubilize oil soluble compounds that are helpful, like vitamin E and tocopherols, and those types of things. So those are the types of things that people kind of like tout as the health aspects of oils, but unless they're really like innately part of those oils, like in the case of avocado oil, which we'll talk about later, you're really not seeing those like health benefits. It's just a saturated fat.
Anything else to add about coconut oil before we move on?
No, nothing else to add.
Okay. I'll ask different questions about the different oils. Don't worry. All right, we're gonna go to palm oil. Huzzah! And I guess we just got to talk about this elephant in the room. Let's talk about the sustainability of palm oil. Let's talk about there are I think at Expo West you can't even have palm oil in your products, even have it there. I think that's true. Don't quote me. So let's talk about what's the sustainability problem there, and then why or why not would you use it? What's the risk maybe?
Yeah. So palm oil, it does historically have, a bad reputation, and that's going to be associated, with things like deforestation, also social impact, low labor. So there's a lot of things that goes into that. But I mean, what a lot of people don't know as well is like, palm oil is it has great yields. It's technically a great product per hectare. You can actually produce a lot of oil with a little bit amount of fruit. So, it is a good oil, but the thing that comes into effect is like how, it's being produced. And like a lot of companies aren't using those sustainable practices. And, palm oil is actually the most widely used oil in the world by volume, which a lot of people don't know either. It's huge, and it's extremely cheap, and it's extremely cheap because of those high yields, but also low labor costs, and that's where kind of the issues come in. But it's very cost effective if done right. So it's kind of the important thing there is kind of aligning yourself with the right partners at source.
Do those people exist? Like if we wanted
Yes.
to build a product, okay.
Those people exist. There are a lot of certifications that you can get when it comes to palm. You can do the RSPO, which is going to be, focusing on sustainability, those companies that are RSPO certified. as well as, going into organics and fair trade. So there's a lot of certifications which can make, there's a lot of varieties of traceability that you can also provide from the supplier. You can ask for different levels of traceability, sustainability. So there are these emerging, companies who are doing it right. And I do see that a lot emerging, like, for example, in Colombia. They're not one of the top global producers, but they are focusing kind of more on that sustainability, organic, fair trade, RSPO. So there are regions out there that are see this and understand there's an issue.
Good. Why don't you cover maybe the formulation, and maybe we can bring formulation of coconut oil into this conversation. Like, how does coconut oil compare with palm oil when you're making a granola bar or whatever?
Yeah, so from a chemical standpoint, they're both extraordinarily similar, and I think it really does come down to what you're looking for from the oil. I do think consumer sentiment is very negative towards palm oil. That being said, it is, from an environmental standpoint, as far as land use, water use, greenhouse gases, it is more sustainable than coconut oil. So it's just interesting because people kind of, again, have this like halo around coconut oil that I'm not really sure how that happened. I'm kind of jealous. I'm like, can I have the PR team
We're
of
gonna put it
coconut
to
oil?
bed here, guys. Take it to your friends.
But yeah, palm oil, it's very similar. So usually what ends up happening is palm oil is going to be used for like pretty much any industry that can use it over coconut oil for the price point. And then coconut oil seems to be used more in the places where people care a lot about consumer sentiment. So in like plant-based meats and cheeses and milks and things like that, people stay away from palm oil in general. That being said, I will say, like, environmentally, yes, it's better. Both of them, because they're grown in the tropics, there is an issue with deforestation and with sociably sustainable, like, social sustainability, right? Of actually treating humans that are making these products like humans and giving them the money that they need to live a human life and do what they need to do. But yeah, I think it's very interesting about palm oil because, yeah, very much as you mentioned, per hectare of land, it is the most productive oil. And that's the reason why it's so cheap and why people want to keep on using it. And I will mention on the deforestation front, it gets such a bad rep for deforestation. And I am from the Good Food Institute. We're an alternative protein nonprofit. I will say that deforestation, the majority of it in the world is being caused by beef, not palm oil. So it's just it's very interesting to me where people decide to pick and choose where they care about different issues, because really, if you did care about deforestation, instead of pivoting away from palm oil, you'd be pivoting away from beef and the soy that goes into feeding beef.
Okay, we're gonna move on to sunflower oil. I don't think this one has maybe the same bad press as maybe a soybean oil, but I think like seed oils in general, I think are getting sort of it's problematic press. Can you speak to that a little bit? Like, why?
Joe Rogan. Just kidding, kind of. But
he's not here.
No. I don't. Joe Rogan can be mad at me. It's fine. I'll live. But yeah, I think it's very interesting about seed oils and the bad press they're getting. I was kind of looking into this because I was like, okay, where is this really stemming from? And part of it is like the omega-6 and omega-9 concentrations in these oils. Other parts are like the processing aspect, whatever. But what I will say is like seed oil. Oh, also, I don't know if anyone else has seen this. I saw it on the back of a taxi here. It was for a restaurant, and it said like really big, "We hate seed oils." Did anyone else see this? I was like, whoa. And it was right outside of here too. And I was like, this is interesting place for this taxi to be right now. And then I was like, I'm not going to that restaurant. I love seed oils. But yeah, I think what it is this misconception that like, okay, we only need omega-3s. We don't need omega-6s and 9s. That's not true. Humans need all of those. It's about the ratio of them. So instead of saying no to seed oils, say yes to more omega-3s. That's the first thing that I would say, and that you would not be able to like consume the amount that would be harmful for you, I think, and from these seed oils for that to be an issue. From the processing standpoint, I also think this is a little bit silly. Like, in order to get anything out of a crop, you have to process it. Like in order to get protein, carbohydrates, oils, if you're eating like a bar or anything like that, like it goes through processing. You have to do that. It's not like a crop, you're gonna look at it and it's just gonna be like, here's some oil. Like that's not how it works, you know? So they do have to go through processing steps. That being said, some interesting work being done with sunflower and soybean oil is looking more at cold press rather than these wet extraction techniques. And I think that it's very interesting for the food space. And the other thing that I'll mention about that really quickly is when you press the oil out, it keeps the meal a little bit more native. So you can get some of that protein functionality that you would really maybe want as a side stream. So a sunflower meal or a soybean meal that could go into a food. Those are great proteins. And if you can figure out these benign processes to kind of co-extract things, it could add value to companies. And I've definitely heard that from places like Aparo and other ingredient companies.
Monica, what's the story with procuring sunflower oil? Is that easier? Fine?
Yeah, I mean, overall, it's a good crop. So I would say the only limitations in procurement has been, you know, Ukraine, for example, they are the leading global producer of sunflower oil, and right after them is Russia. So, you know, 2 years ago when we saw Russia invade Ukraine, the prices almost doubled. They couldn't export. There was a massive shortage of sunflower oil in the market. So, you know, since then, we have seen, you know, the prices have definitely stabilized, come down, and we're in a much better place than we were a few years ago. So it's pretty much come down to the previous market, kind of before that situation in 2022. So, I mean, overall, there are still, you know, some concerns there, and, you know, to diversify your regions as well. So I think that's, you know, one of the main concerns. And then also, you know, as with all the oils, crops, weather, you know, drought causes smaller seeds, which causes, you know, smaller yields on oil. So, but overall, those are.
Is it? I don't know anything about this, so this is my just curiosity. Are oils easy to like sub out one for the other, or they're just I can be like, I don't want to use palm oil anymore. I'm going to use whatever soybean oil. Is that fine?
From a food science standpoint, when you're formulating with these, there's a few things to consider, but really the big one is how much saturated versus unsaturated fatty acids there are, and how long those chains are. So really saturated oils or fats, because fats are made out of these saturated fatty acids, the saturation, it essentially makes the chain just like very, very long and stackable. So you can like stack all these fatty acids on top of each other and get a nice solid structure out of it. Whereas sunflower oil, avocado oil, soybean oil, these are more unsaturated fatty acids and they're kind of kinked. So you can imagine when they stack on top of each other, you know, it's not like a nice little brick building one by one. They end up kind of like moving around and forming a liquid instead. So that's what's happening on the molecular level. So when you're looking at that, that's pretty much going to be the main difference when you're formulating is like, okay, do I want something that's more solid to start with? Do I want something that's more liquid to start with? There's some really good alternative fats coming out there that use these unsaturated oils, but then are able to structure them in a way so that they look like fats, act like fats, but they're just as healthy as these unsaturated fatty acids are natively, which is awesome. But yeah, those are going to be like really big main things. And then when you get into things like sunflower oil and avocado, there are some like little benefits. I wouldn't say that, again, it really depends on how much you're consuming and with what and things like that. Sunflower oil does have some antioxidants in it naturally, so that may be something if you're formulating and you're trying to make an antioxidant claim, you wouldn't necessarily be able to sub out sunflower oil for soybean oil.
Got it. Okay, we're going to move on to avocado oil. Let's talk about sustainability of avocado oil. Is that better? A good story? Risky story?
Yeah, so I mean, avocado is trending right now. It's definitely, I would say, it's one of the newer oils. Then, you know, the coconut, palm, sunflower have been around forever. So I would say overall, avocado it doesn't have as much regulation around it compared to some of the other oils. There's still, for example, the codex, and the people who aren't familiar with codex, it's the food safety guidelines as well as the quality and the methods of analysis. So they're looking at tightening that, and it's not necessarily a food safety issue with avocado whatsoever. It's more so concerns for adulteration. That's a concern in the market. So just kind of what are the best practices to testing to make sure that this avocado oil is really avocado oil, because it's a fantastic oil, and it's also a little bit more expensive. So you want to make sure that you have good quality oil as well.
Is it riskier for adulteration? Is it more at risk to be adulterated just because it's new, or is there something about it that's easier to mess up?
No, I mean, it's just, I think it's an expensive oil.
Okay.
And yeah, and there are certain
Got it.
testings, like when you test a crude oil, if you test the sterols, the trifurals, like there's different things you can test to just ensure, like when you test an oil, you look at their fatty acid profile to ensure like this is the actual oil. So there's just, I think there's just like more regulations being put into place to, avoid any of that.
Got it. Okay. Pri, what are some, man, we have 8 minutes left. What are some interesting things formulating with avocado? What are things to keep in mind?
I think it's really similar to any other unsaturated oil in this case. The nice thing about avocados is they do have a little bit of vitamin E in them. That being said, if you add vitamin E to any of these other oils, they'll do a really great job of solubilizing it and doing the same thing. But right now, it's avocados just having like a little consumer perception moment, I think. And I will also mention that Beyond Meat recently reformulated their burgers so that instead of coconut oil, they're actually using avocado oil. I'm sure they're doing some really fun structuring things so that it can look a little bit more solid in those patties. But a huge move on that is going to be, from the consumer perspective, is just moving away from these saturated fats into unsaturated. And yeah, people really like avocados. They just really like avocados.
Is there anything nutritional, like nutrition-wise, that you need to keep in mind when using avocado oil?
Just that vitamin E. If you're trying to like pull at unique selling proposition straws, that's a good one.
Okay. And now the last one we have, soybean oil. We'll talk about this for a few minutes, and we can answer some audience questions. I guess, what are some challenges with soybean oil? What are some things? Why use it? Why choose it?
Yeah, I mean, soybean oil is going to be one of the easiest oils to procure at this point. It's on par with palm oil as far as being able to get it pretty easily. That being said, soybean oil has a lot of competition, so that's something to just kind of keep in mind. I think right now we make enough soybean oil that it's not too much of an issue, but as we get to a point where, like, I'm from California, and a couple of years ago, I think Gavin Newsom signed something that pretty much said, like, by 2035, we're no longer going to have combustible fuel engine cars. No one's selling those anymore, and that's that by 2035. This sounds like a really great thing on paper, but unfortunately, the electric car industry is just not meeting that 2035 demand fast enough. So what that has turned to is people looking for sustainable fuel sources and really focusing and putting their sustainable fuel resources in the soybean oil bucket. So I do foresee some of the similar supply chain bottleneck issues that we see with coconut oil, because it's so ubiquitous and it's being used for so many different types of industries for soybean. And the issue that really arises with soybean oil on this is that there's a lot of different ways to make soy. You guys know that. I'm sure you're going to talk about like GMO versus non-GMO, organic versus non-organic. I mean, maybe, but I like, that's one thing to really keep in mind. And when you're developing a soybean, and our soy is highly developed in the U.S. and Brazil and all these other places, when you're developing them, you are developing them for a few applications in mind. So this might mean that the really big agricultural producers like BASF, Syngenta, Bayer Crop Science, they're going to be focusing on making soybean for fuel rather than for food. So that's just, something to kind of keep in mind. But I think it's a great oil. So yeah.
That's interesting. Monica, thoughts on?
No, I agree with a lot that you just mentioned, and also just accessibility is very easy here in the U.S. Like there are, it's going into very many uses, but also, the U.S. is the largest supplier, so it is easily accessible here to get soybean, and it's going into all different industries, the biodiesel, the feed, food, everything. But just keeping in mind with all these different oils, like there's different levels, expeller press versus non-GMO versus organic. There are different price points for all these oils depending on your applications and your needs for your own food.
Awesome. Okay, we have 5 minutes left. I have some more questions, but I would love if the audience has any to answer them.
Hi, everybody. My name is Shantanu Yusuf. I'm with ACH Foods, maker of Mazola corn oil. My question is, in terms of looking at these oils that you have here, which one would you say is like more reusable, especially when it comes to like frying?
Reusable. I would say sunflower oil is very good for high heat frying applications if you use a high oleic oil. So there's different types. There's low oleic, mid oleic, high oleic. High oleic is kind of trending upwards because it is more of a stable oil. It's got a longer shelf life, and it's just the oleic content makes for more stability. So that's one of them. And also, I mean, just in general, using a higher heat application, because you could use palm as well. Palmoline's really, I mean, I could say so many of these actually. You could say palm, soy. Avocado also has a very high heat, so it's good. You can use it for high heat applications as well.
And I'll just add that, I haven't really thought about that so much, so I'm gonna probably have a little rabbit hole later to think about reheating and reusing oils. But off the top of my head, I would be a little bit trepidatious with the unsaturated fatty acids in that case. So like sunflower, avocado, and soybean. Although, again, if you use like different modifications of that, the high oleic, it might be different, or it is different. But these unsaturated fatty acids, they are more prone to rancidity. So those unsaturated, the kinks are double bonds that can react with oxygen. So it could be more prone to rancidity over time and won't have as good of a shelf life. And definitely not in heat, yeah.
Thank you. You mentioned at the start about hundreds of oils. I would love to have you just use your crystal ball for a moment and think about kind of all the things. We talk about deforestation and high pricing, and what do you think might be kind of that next consumer oil that they might love?
I love that question. Are you guys from AAK? Or are you? Oh, okay. Because you were so excited. I was like, who is it? Yeah, I mean, like, I think part of it, and I'm going to actually plug AAK. So I was wondering, I was like, is that, like, are you softballing me so I can, like, say something about them? But no, I think the future is going to be, like, being a little bit more creative about the way that we use these oils. In reality, even though there are a lot of them, when you look chemically at oils and fats, they're not very different from each other. Whereas like proteins, carbohydrates, they look totally different. Like a pea protein versus an animal protein is gonna look very, very different, even versus the soy protein. So, but when you look at these oils from a chemical standpoint, they are extremely similar. So you don't really have that much mobility as far as formulation goes with these natively. And then from a price point, these are incredibly cheap commodities. Oils are going to be the cheapest out of carbohydrates, proteins, everything. Like that is the cheapest thing that you can get. So it's going to be incredibly hard for us to get anything that's going to be enticing for a price point that's going to beat palm oil, for instance, or soybean oil. I think a really fun thing to do is like consider, okay, if you do want to formulate with coconut oil because it's more solid, can you mix it with something else so that you're using way less coconut oil in your formula, but it kind of still gives that same mouthfeel. And so for instance, that cream cheese over there, and I swear I don't work for AAK or anything, but that cream cheese over there, it's partially coconut oil. It's a plant-based cream cheese, but it also has, I believe it's high oleic sunflower oil. Is anyone, okay, yeah. I was like, is anyone giving me like a thumbs up? Yeah. So that's a really good way of kind of being able to utilize the coconut oil, but without having to necessarily completely rely on it, and be able to use something like sunflower oil, which right now isn't having supply chain bottlenecks, although maybe later we'll see. Another thing I'm really excited about is like structured oils. So can we take these sunflower and avocado and soybean oils and structure?
Supply Side West 2024. The show
Okay,
must go on.
I will be
Official
okay.
news on.
Structure them. The other thing, really quickly, is fermentation-derived oils and fats and cultivated-derived oils and fats. So we can do some of this stuff in a
We
bioreactor
look
that looks a
forward
lot.
to seeing you next year in Ottawa. Supply Side Global
I feel like this is the
2025.
buzzer. Like, get
Yeah,
off
it's
the
like we're
stage.
Okay, thank you all for coming.
sorry,
Thank you again,
thank you.
AAK. You guys are awesome. And then, yeah, you can, they're going to kick us off the show floor. But
Children,
exchange business cards really quick.
the show must go
Thank
on.
you
All right,
all.
Thank you, everybody.